the positive freedom. So this every time it is a challenge. Before that, I would like, now that students are here, my earnest request to them is, please see, sirs, it is one thing is the information that he is imparting to us, and we are getting enlightened and educated with that. So other thing is his ability to retain so much of knowledge in his mind and train his mind to get at his will all the quotations, anecdotes and the information at his command. So that comes out of regular practice of keeping his mind active with voracious reading and acquisition of knowledge. This is a great lesson that we all can learn and exercise for ourselves also. So sir, it is not memento. Every month it is a challenge for me whenever I go out in the airport bookshops to buy a book which actually suits you. And it is a really challenge, because to me, to select a book for you, every book appears to me that you would have already read. And 90% of the books are not suitable to you. So I am making that effort. Today it is a bad politics. Churchill, how he cheated India.
Sri Rangarajan and esteemed friends, I am grateful to my friend Sri Rangarajan and Dr. Vijay Kumar, and inevitably to Sri M.S. Srinivas and Sri Jagat Rao for organizing these lectures. I am too human not to be touched by the kindness of Sri Rangarajan's words, and too dark to be seen blushing. Therefore, I thank him for this. And also I must say that Varhal Chetty giving a bouquet, I consider it an honor, though he doesn't like that to be described that way. And because I am in my what you call twilight zone, I must express my gratitude as I do to this is a fact that must be acknowledged. As John Morley said, if it is truth, repeat it as often as possible. So in 1954, when I stepped into Voltaire as a what you call country cousin of Mr. D.V. Ramanamurthy, my late D.V. Ramanamurthy, my cousin, I was very nervous. I came here with trepidation because I came from Masilepettayam, a small place. Of course, as I said earlier in a meeting, Masilepettayam is a town of the past, Vizag is a city of the future. And so I came here. The first person to make an impact on my career was Varhal Chetty. Then D.V. Subba Rao, then Gopal Krishna Reddy. I remember these three for three reasons. Believe me, all the three not by choice, but by accident and by design also. Varhal Chetty by design, because our professor used to come to the class and say, did you go to Varhal Chetty's book center and buy the book? So in the university the practice was, professor should be impressed by the student. I always say it very loudly and very proudly. I am very, very particularly happy because my principal's son is here. I feel honored by the presence of Sri Lakshmi Narayana. I don't know what a great principal he was. I never knew that he is in Vizag. Sri Rangadhama Rao Garu, he was my principal. I was a student president. He guided me. He encouraged me. He was my benefactor. And today, most delighted that Sri Lakshmi Narayana is here in the audience. My pranams to you and through you to your great father. So the first thing is Varhal Chetty. We used to go to Varhal Chetty because we wanted to impress our Srinivasan professor. Because we went to Varhal Chetty, sir. In the university, the practice was Vice Chancellor Krishna used to go to the library exactly at 3 o'clock every day. All professors were in the library at 2:45 because they used to impress the Vice Chancellor. All the students were in the library at 2:30 to impress the professor. This is a virtuous cycle, not a vicious cycle, virtuous cycle. Professors being there because of the Vice Chancellor and students being there because of the professors. So first person to really meet was Varahal Chitti. And the last 56 years, ours has been a love-hate relationship. And hatred from his side and love from my side. No, hatred within inverted commas. And then the second person to make an impact was D.V. Subbarao. He became my cricket captain. And we were a champion side, like Janata Party. We were individually brilliant, but collectively weak. So what Mr. Sudarshan Rao did was, he brought a gentleman to make the team effective, successful. So Subbarao was a gentleman. He used to come at number 11, never bowled, no chance to bat, always smiling, keep the flock together, a gentleman skipper. We won the cup. That Rangadhamarao was our principal. He was so happy. The picture is there in the principal's office. We won the Tirumuthi Shield, beating Rajahmundry, Anantapur, so many colleges, and Subbarao was the captain. So Subbarao made a profound impact on me. Then my third icon was Gopal Krishna Reddy. I always say, triple C, concern of Varahal Chitti, concern for others, civility of Subbarao, and compassion of Gopal Krishna Reddy. If these three C's, even if 1/10 of what they possessed, if I cultivate, I thought my life would be worth living. That was my philosophy of life. There is no exaggeration. Subbarao civility means civility is a combination of courtesy and humility. Subbarao is always humble and courteous. Varahal Chitti concern is so much, he becomes cynical. Concern that borders on cynicism. And sometimes he is like a mosquito repellent. And he will be very, very pungent in his attacks and concern and things like that. Gopal Krishna Reddy's compassion was extraordinary. So these three C's, I must say, I am very grateful. Anyway, this must be said because a life of purpose is the purpose of life, said a great philosopher. So that purpose you learn in life by learning from others. And so the other side, no digression for that. Now, first of all, let me briefly restate the reason why these lectures are being organized. Rangarajan was mainly responsible, Mr. Rangarajan. He said, you must do it for the benefit of not elders. Varahal Chitti said, I want students, and students, this is holidays for them. And one or two boys wanted to come, but then it's okay. They're anyway recording it. If it is useful to them, at least to some extent, Isaiah Berlin very wonderfully said, a teacher should never be under the illusion that he is influencing a large number of students. Even if one or two students are influenced, that's enough. You may have taught for 30, 40 years, one student is enough, good student. He becomes the torchbearer. So, this was the purpose of organizing this. And I repeat, Dahl's excellent support for this kind of exercise. Why should we analyze? What does it matter to the people of Tamil Nadu if one chief minister is replaced by another chief minister? How is it important for the people of India if a woman becomes a revolutionary and throws out a great party and organization in the battle for ballot? That lady. Somebody sent me, with your kind permission, a joke. You know, this is communication age. I shall read out shortly. And then, how does it affect us? You will ask a question. Dahl gave 3 brilliant answers. We must analyze and discuss politics for 3 reasons. Number 1, to understand the world around us better. Number 2, to make more intelligent choices. And number 3, to make an impact, to bring about change, big or small. If a person can bring about a small change in a small area, he is rewarded. That's enough. Maybe he's a bookseller, maybe he's a doctor, maybe he's a teacher, maybe he's a businessman, maybe he's a philanthropist, maybe he's a Rotary Club president. This is the most important thing. That is why these 3 reasons I said. So this exercise has been made, and I must say, the first lecture was organized on December 28th, very graciously hosted by Dr. Vijay Kumar, Mr. Rangarajan Srinivas and others. December 28th we chose because that was the day on which the Indian National Congress was founded, 1885, at Bombay. And that was the day on which India's cultural pluralism was articulated by Englishmen, Parsis, Muslims and Hindus. Something extraordinary happened, 1885, December 20th. That lecture was held on that day. The second lecture, the making of the Constitution, was held on January 25th on the eve of the Republic Day, the same hall. The third lecture was held on March 4th. And the fourth should have been held in April. It's not Rangarajan's fault. It just didn't happen because April was a very crowded month. And some of you may have seen this, but just this is a message that I got from my daughter who received it from somebody. India now ruled by Amma in south, Didi in east, Benji in the north, Auntie in the capital, Madam in center and wife at home. It is a woman's world. Therefore, the fourth lecture today is on, actually Mr. Rangarajan, this is going to be a very elaborate exercise because if it is going to be circulated among students, it needs a little more explanation. Therefore, we'll have another one on this same subject. The third, fourth and fifth are very important from the point of view, my friend is here, he is guiding civil service examination students. They will be useful from the point of view of civil service examination, competitive examination students. That's why I have brought some points, PowerPoint presentation also. Not exactly because I am not an expert in this. I just wanted to show that also. That is we'll do it 20th century. Now, the biggest challenge for us is this, we're organizing this three lecture. The three important aspects of this are the 20th century is a very significant century, vastly different from the past. How does it differ? I've already covered about 40-50 years of history in my first lecture. I made a summary of it. This is what is called a paradigm shift, demographically, politically, socially, and economically. This is a paradigm shift. And here, a very important point is, that is to be borne in mind is, in 1900s, first time the term my friend will be happy to know. The term geopolitics was used for the first time by a Swedish political scientist by name Geller. And I'll give this name and other things also later. And now what is this geopolitics? What is the difference between geopolitics and political geography? All of us know that Alexander's guru Aristotle asked him to carry an atlas wherever he went. The first great teacher of geography was Aristotle. Conquerors must always carry atlas. In the United States, we know very well, in advanced countries, geography is projected on the computer, in the car also for that matter. Route. I was surprised when in Taiwan, my son was going in wrong route. There was a warning on the screen in his car, you are going on the wrong route, please go back 3 kilometers and take another route. Direction is. My God, it's fantastic. This is being done through technology today, route correction, map, etc. being used. Every campus has a map in America. That's why when foreign students come, they used to ask us in the university, where is the campus map? We never had that kind of geographical sense of geography. So Alexander was the first to implement this, carry atlas in his pocket, he used to carry, And geopolitics was a term that was used for the first time in the year 1900, 20th century. What is the difference between political geography and geopolitics? Political geography is a subject that examines the political aspects of geography, political phenomena of geography. Geopolitics is a subject that examines the geographical aspects of politics. This became a very popular subject after 1900, and you will be surprised to know that the man who made geopolitics a compulsory subject in his universities was Adolf Hitler. Hitler was the greatest champion of geopolitics. He used to promote people as professors. What he wanted was ultimately, just look at the genius of Hitler. He wanted his professors of geography to tell him where exactly he should attack. And then he evolved a theory called heartland theory, Hitler's heartland theory. That means if you capture the heartland, you will be capturing the entire world. That's exactly. Geographically, politically, Hitler was a very shrewd observer of events, and he prepared his attacks in his room, in his drawing room, on the map. So geopolitics became a very important subject. Now this geopolitics today is a very important subject. I shall take it up differently in relation to oceans in my next lecture. But today I just want to focus on some of the important things that happened in the 20th century, which we will discuss today. 2 world wars, 3 ideologies, rise of democracy, birth of international organization, collapse of 4 great empires, rise of big powers, end of colonialism, Cold War, superpower rivalry, collapse of USSR, rise of China, terrorism and fundamentalism, globalization were the main features of the 20th century. This is a very simple thing. Now, we already discussed how, for instance, the First World War, it was the costliest war. It was the bloodiest war. There were wars earlier. We also referred to the 100 Years' War. 100 Years' War between France and England. You will ask a question, how can they fight for 100 years? It's impossible. Palnat Yuddham for that matter. Fight in the daytime, come back home, take rest, dress up your wounds, and the next morning you go again to the battlefield. 3 generations of people fought England and France from 1330 to 1443. It was called the 100 Years' War. But the First World War was called the costliest and the bloodiest war. It was fought for 1565 days. 10 million people were killed, and after the end of the war, people said, never again, never again. Idi Prasuti Vairagyam, Smasana Vairagyam kadandi, Yuddha Vairagyam godan. It happened in Mahabharata war, it happened here also. We will not fight again. There will be no war among nations, they said. But human nature being what it is, immediately after 5-6 years, when the League of Nations was born, men were sharpening their knives again for the Second World War. The First World War was the costliest, the bloodiest war in human history, and the League of Nations was born. I mentioned this last time. Mr. Wilson, the father of the League of Nations, his 10 points, his 14 points, and the joke that French Prime Minister made against Wilson, God was satisfied with 10 points. Mr. Wilson is not satisfied with 14 also, because Wilson always thought that he was superior to God. We mentioned all these things, the First War. Then the Second World War. Now, in between, something very interesting happened. The rise of 3 isms: communism, Nazism, and fascism. Communism, thanks to Karl Marx. Professor Harold Vasquez summed up Marxism in one beautiful sentence, which I often quote. There were Marxist thinkers earlier. Marx was not the first communist thinker. In fact, political philosophy says that Plato was the first communist thinker. Communism of wives, communism of property, Plato propounded. Rulers will have neither property nor family. This was the philosophy of Plato. But then what was the achievement of Karl Marx? Brilliantly, Professor Lasky said, Marx found communism a chaos and left it a movement. It was in a chaotic condition, philosophically, ideologically. He organized it into a wonderful movement. And the impact of Marx resulted in one of the greatest revolutions of modern times, the Russian Revolution. And communism became an established ideology impacting millions of lives all over the world. That was the first thing. Then Nazism, National Socialism. This Nazism, what you call Germany for that matter, Adolf Hitler articulated the Nazi philosophy against other races, against other religions. We know something about it, National Socialism. And Hitler, during that time, wrote a small book. It was called Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf means my struggle. Hitler was struggling. One of the jokes in international relations was, Hitler goes to Mussolini in 1922. Hitler was an ordinary corporal in the army. He seeks an interview. Mussolini says, I don't grant an interview to that stupid corporal, let him get out. And the same Mussolini in 1937 was at the airport with a salute. He received Hitler. That was Rome, Berlin, Tokyo axis in 1930. That's irony of politics. So Hitler, Mein Kampf, that beautiful book by Scheirer, the Third Reich, is a marvelous book, huge book. That man writes about this. He says, Mein Kampf sold more than the Bible. In Europe, more copies of Mein Kampf were sold than Bible, especially in Germany. Because why? If a copy of the Mein Kampf was found in the house, the people were safe. Otherwise, the secret police would come and put them in jail. So that is why Mein Kampf sold more in Germany than the Bible, joke historian Scheirer. Now, if Nazism was the ideology of Germany, there was fascism. Benito Mussolini. Fascist means a bundle of axes and rods. Axes and rods. Another kind of authoritarian philosophy. Mussolini glorified motherhood. Mussolini gave, if Hitler gave awards to history professors, Mussolini gave awards to mothers with the highest number of children. The more, stronger Italy will become, he said. More children a family has, stronger Italy will become. And one of his famous quotations was, war is to man what motherhood is to a woman. War is to man what motherhood is to a woman. That means everybody must fight. Every man must be a soldier. Every man must be a soldier. Every woman must be a mother of as many children as possible. That was the philosophy of Benito Mussolini. Now, historians, I like two historians in particular. Indian people, I think Indian readers normally like Ramchandra Guha for his different points of view that he presents. Earlier, Rumila Thapar was highly respected, what you call historian. S. Gopal was one. Modern times, in current times, Ramchandra Guha is a popular historian, his point of view. A very interesting interpretation was given by one historian. That interesting interpretation is, if Europe supplied three ideologies, communism, fascism, and Nazism, India supplied another ideology, non-violence and satyagraha. Was Gandhi giving a reply to Europe? That was a hypothetical statement made by one Indian analyst. Gandhi was giving a reply to Europe. If you have an ideology, we also can give an ideology. This is a very important point. I wish to elaborate on this later when I take up Jawaharlal Nehru and foreign policy in my next presentation. That's a very important point. All of us must discuss that and also inform the younger generation about the evolution of foreign policy and whether Nehru's policy is relevant or not. That's a different thing. So, Gandhi provided an alternative to communism, fascism, and Nazism in the form of non-violence and satyagraha. This is it. Now, after saying all these things, we come to the Second World War. Costlier and bloodier than the first, longer than the first. 1939, September 3rd, when England formally said we are at war. Till then, England was following a policy of appeasement. Hitler, the more he asked, the more he got. There was a joke about Hitler and Chamberlain. Hitler was the Führer, leader of Germany. Chamberlain was the Prime Minister of England. And Chamberlain, I think it was John Gunther who brilliantly said, the difference between Chamberlain and Hitler is very simple. Chamberlain is taking his weekend in the country. Hitler was taking countries in the weekend. That's a very simple difference. So this fellow used to gobble up this country, that country, etc., etc. Finally, England declared war. September 3rd, 1939, the Second World War broke out. Longer, costlier, bloodier, this war lasted. Till 1942, the curve was moving. It was a war between the Allied powers and the Axis powers. The Axis powers were Rome, Berlin, Tokyo. Japan, Germany, and Italy. They were called the Axis powers. The Allied powers were France, Britain, Russia, and the United States. So this war went on. All of us know something about the war. Vizag also was affected during the war, bomb dropping and all that. In the last presentation, I made a reference to 2 or 3 very important. Ladies and gentlemen, one very interesting point is public life and private difficulty. I often say when we read the lives of great people, look at Gandhiji, look at Nehru, or look at, for that matter, Mamata Banerjee today. I'm sorry, you will forgive me for bringing in current politics. Great Mamata, what I liked really about Mamata Banerjee is, she said, I am Mamata. She lived in a very ordinary house. She says, I will live like an ordinary person. I will still have the common man's touch, common person's touch. I will not be different simply because I'm in power. Now, when you look at even Prakasam for that matter, the personal hardship, children getting into trouble, money not being there, physical infirmity, old age, etc. Public duty was never considered unimportant by them. Public duty is number one. This is, I think, one of the wonderful things in life. All of us do it for that matter. I mean, especially when I look at the elders in this gathering, despite age, they do their duty. What they consider very important. Look at Prakasam. Look at Gandhi. The trouble they received from their children, from their sons. But still, they carried on the struggle, unmindful of personal hardship, financial difficulties, emotional strain, etc. That was it. Similarly today, please understand, whenever there is a huge crisis, every dark cloud has a silver lining. When the Second World War was, at its height, 1942 was a horrible year. It was a year in which, people were running for shelter. Hitler was on the rampage. He was taking every country as he wished in his stride. He was attacking left, right, and center. At that time, 3 very important things happened. I shall repeat them only briefly. January 1st, 1942, Franklin Roosevelt said United Nations will hold the key to the future. He did not mean the United Nations organization. Just casually, he said United Nations. By that time, the first international organization, the League of Nations, was almost dead. Somebody jokingly said the League of Nations went on dying from 1935 to 1945. It ultimately died when it was buried. It went on dying. So Roosevelt first of all said United Nations in 1942. The second important thing that Roosevelt said was 4 freedoms. I mentioned it last time. Freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom of expression, and freedom of religion. Just because 1 or 2 youngsters are there, what is the difference between from and off? From is negative freedom, off is positive freedom. Off and to are positive, from and against are negative. Freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom from poverty, it's negative. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, it is positive. Right to freedom, right to religion, right to education, this is positive. Constitution, fundamental rights, right against exploitation, మనకి ఇంగ్లీష్ మన భాష కాదు కదండి. మా పిల్లలు కూడా పాపం అప్పుడు రైట్ ఎక్స్‌ప్లాయిటేషన్ రాసిస్తుంటారు 2K. పాపం వాళ్ళకి తెలియదు కదా, నథింగ్ రాంగ్. ఎఫర్ట్స్ మన లాంగ్వేజ్ కాదు, మన తెలుగులోనే బోళ్ళని తప్పులు మాట్లాడుతుంటాం ఇంగ్లీష్లో. సో రైట్ ఎక్స్‌ప్లాయిటేషన్ పెద్ద ప్రోసర్లు 2 అన్నాడు, కొట్టేసి అంత పెద్ద వాడి పాపం ఎక్స్‌ప్లాయిటేషన్ అన్నాడు కదా, వాడికి 2 అగేన్స్ట్ బదులు 2 పెట్టాడు అంతే. సో యూ మస్ట్ బి లిటిల్ ఫర్ గివింగ్ ఇన్ సర్టన్. ఎనీవే, ద 4 freedoms Roosevelt used. So then came another marvelous thing. I mentioned this. William Beveridge was born in England, in India. That fellow's father was an ICS officer. He became a great economic philosopher, thinker, or trendsetter because his teacher in Cambridge said, you must do something different. This is one example how I mentioned Alexander being influenced by Aristotle. Beveridge was influenced by his teacher Kate. His teacher said, don't worry about studies, do something meaningful in life. And this man came up with a Beveridge report, a marvelous report, in which he said 5 giant evils are there. These giant evils are, number 1, want. Want is poverty. Number 2, disease, ill health, sickness. Number 3, idleness. Most people are idle. Number 4, ignorance, illiteracy. Number 5, squalor. Squalor is pollution. These are the 5 giant evils. If these giant evils are removed, society will be transformed. It will be a welfare state. 1942 witnessed the birth of modern welfare state. So 1942, 3 very important things happened. United Nations, the term was used by Roosevelt. Number 2, 4 freedoms were enunciated by Roosevelt. They became the foundation for the Human Rights Charter that was enunciated later by his wife in 1948 December. Human Rights Charter. And then Beveridge report, 5 giant evils by which a welfare state will be established. Now these are the 4. Now I shall come to a very interesting subject. I shall probably with this I would like to sign off for today. But this is a very fascinating subject. 2 things were simultaneously taking place. We are in April 1945. April 1945 was an important month for many reasons. Most important reason was the San Francisco conference of 200 delegates to make the United Nations Charter. They met. They started meeting on April 25th. 200 delegates. April 12th, Roosevelt died. April 30th, Hitler committed suicide. Churchill lost the election. Stalin was busy with the Cold War. So simultaneously, as one war was ending, another war was beginning. The hot war was ending, the Cold War was beginning. It happens. That is why the most important thing is, in election they fight together, but when they come to power, that is the beginning of the problem. Adversity sometimes is an opportunity, but power is a responsibility that people may not like to share with others. Therefore, this happened simultaneously. Now, in April 1945, 200 delegates met. India also participated. UN got on. UN will come to UN. This is a very interesting. The charter was completed on June 26th, 1945. The writing part of it, the discussion part of it. 200 delegates. It consisted of 8,000 words, 111 articles, 19 chapters, and the charter was signed by all the 50 countries, but there was a condition in the charter article: only when the big 5 send in their ratification, United Nations would come into force. Before that, something very interesting happened. Politics is a chessboard. Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin, from 1943 onwards, they were preparing for the future. The big 3 they were called. They met